nobody is responding. ନାଇଁ ଲର୍ଣ୍ଣରଟା ମୋ ଥରେ ରହିଛି, କିନ୍ତୁ ମୁଁ ହାଲୋ ହାଲୋ କହୁଛି ପାର୍ଟିସିପାଣ୍ଟସ୍ କି ଗୋଟେ ଆରଥରକ 2-4 ଜଣ ଥିଲେ। ଆଚ୍ଛା ହଉ, ଆରମ୍ଭ କରିବି ରେକର୍ଡ। Hello. So today we shall discuss about distribution of benefits of development. Equal distribution of development is very important. And it is always imperative on our part to make what should we or how should we develop this concept of development? What should we understand by development? What do we understand by development? Always, development is a multifaceted phenomenon. It is a continuous and it is a complex process. The development process, it involves diverse agencies and people with different hierarchical levels of living, professing different occupation, and also having a variety of cultural diversity. And it encompasses myriad interventions of strategies depending on the socio-economic, political, and cultural status of the people. If we ask the economists, they conceptualize this concept of development in terms of saving, investment, imports, exports, and growth, and with varying roles assigned to markets and prices, and state controls and expenditures. In this context, we can take up the opinion of one well-known development economist, Keith Griffin. He has identified 6 major development strategies which have been carried out by governments in developing countries. So, generally speaking, development, it generally means the improvement of people's lifestyle to improved education, then income, skills development and employment. And development also means that people should have decent housing, security, food, clothing, and the skills to read and write. So, with the passage of time, the meaning of economic development has changed considerably, particularly during the past 2-3 decades. We have a changed approach towards this economic development. And some references they have been given also in the texts to the pioneering works of Dudley Sears, that is the meaning of development, and also Amartya Sen's development as freedom. In these particular studies regarding economic development, measures and strategies of development and approaches to its study they have been included. And side by side with the economic development, what is more important is human development. The concept of human development has received much attention in development economics because it provides a link between the growth and development. You know, when we use the term development, it means something which is more than just expansion of income and wealth. Development is being perceived both as an end and also growth as a means. In 1990, there was a report published that is called Human Development Report. There is a very appropriate definition of this development. This report has defined development as a process of enlarging people's choices. The most crucial of these wide-ranging choices are to live a long and healthy life, to be educated, and to have access to resources needed for a decent standard of living. So, development includes the parameters like good health, skill development, knowledge development, and the formation of human capabilities and the use people make for their required capabilities are the basic requirements of the enhancement of their choices and their capacity to exercise them. In this context of development, the concept more emphasized is equal distribution. And also, the concept of social justice is also emphasized. You know, when more concretely we criticize or attack some of the policies or some state of affairs as socially unjust, suppose we are going to criticize a particular situation as socially unjust, we believe that a person, or more usually a category of persons, they enjoys fewer advantages than the person and group of persons ought to enjoy. ତେଣୁ ଜଣେ ବ୍ୟକ୍ତି ତାର ଡ୍ୟୁରୁ ଯଦି କମ ପାଇଲା, ଆମେ ସାଙ୍ଗେ ସାଙ୍ଗେ କହୁଛେ here there is a unjust treatment. He is not given his due. But if we objectively we can analyze it, what exactly are the goods and bads? The benefits and burdens, whose allocation or whose equal distribution is the concern of just development. କୋଉଟା ଭଲ କୋଉଟା ମନ୍ଦ କୋଉଟା ଜଷ୍ଟ ଅନଜଷ୍ଟ କୋଉଟା କହୁଛି ବେନିଫିଟ କୋଉଟା କହୁଛି ବର୍ଡନ ସେଗୁଡାକ objectively define କରିବା is the most crucial task before us. Whenever we think of development, immediately what is coming to our mind? Immediately we think in terms of income and wealth, job, educational opportunity. ଏହିପରି କେତେ ଗୁଡେ ଆଇଟମ ଆମ ମନ ଭିତରକୁ ଆସେ ଯେ ଇକୋନୋମିକ ଡେଭଲପମେଣ୍ଟ ସହିତ ଆମେ ଏଇ ପର୍ଟିକୁଲାର ସବଜେକ୍ଟ ବା ବିଷୟବସ୍ତୁ ଗୁଡ଼ିକୁ ଚିନ୍ତା କରିବା. But the thing is that the list does not end here. The question is that how far this list can be extended. गोटे निर्दिष्ट आइटम को आमे से लिस्ट भितर स्थान दबा कि नहीं, that is also a very pertinent issue. And what are the particular considerations that a particular item should be given a place in that list of development or should be excluded from that? This is one pertinent question. Another important dimension of our discussion is if social justice has something to do with distribution, what precisely does this mean? Should there be a distributing agency which can bring about the outcome to justice or injustices we may try to assess? Here, while analyzing these points, we can touch on 5 broad theories of justice which can be utilized for equal distribution of the benefits of development. उन्नयन प्रोसेस का डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस रो बेनिफिट ता लोकन पाखरे पहुंचवा दरकार एवं इक्वली पहुंचवा दरकार एवं सेति पई पांचटी ब्रॉड थियोरीज रो कल्पना कराई छै. The principle of equality, the principle of utility, the principle of compensatory justice, then Rawls' principle of justice as fairness, and also the concept of social justice. ये पांचटा broad principle of justice रो अवधारणा करा जाय छी. And all these theories of justice, they involve some kind of distribution of benefits and burdens amongst the members of the society. The principle of formal equality tends credence to the principle, and the conception of proportional equality recognizes apportionment according to the need. Rawls' theory of justice हमें यदि हमें तापर किसी आइडिया ना बा, we can think in terms of the principle of justice as fairness. So benefit of development को किमते apportion करा जीवो, distribution करा जीवो. Different philosophers, they have forwarded different theories, and we have broad theories of justice. You know, There is a principle of desert. Justice according to the desert rests on the principle that it is fair to reward others according to their merits or deserts. Each individual ought to receive the benefits and the evil consequent upon the conduct. And when we act, and especially when we produce, we naturally create certain benefits depending on our efforts, depending on our skills, depending on our capabilities. And the benefits which come out of that must be accrued to us. It must be secured to us. It must be given to us. This is what is called the desert principle. I was an advocate a theory of desert principle. George Harris. He maintains that all social values must yield whenever those values threaten meritocratic rule. So George Harris extended the principle that so far as men are equal, opportunities should be in proportion to their merit. You please, I'm again repeating, according to George Harris principle, so far as men are equal, opportunities should be in proportion to their merit. So, what is the touchstone of his principle, his philosophy? The rule of the best. The rule of the best. Another theorist, Goldman, he also recombines the rationality of the rule that benefits and burdens must be distributed on the basis of competence and merit. Both the benefit among burden, ମାନେ ଜଣେ ରେସ୍ପନ୍ସିବିଲିଟି ନବ ବେନିଫିଟ ବି ନବ ଉଭୟ, ଏବଂ ତାର ଆପର୍ସନମେଣ୍ଟଟା বা ତାର ଡିଷ୍ଟ୍ରିବ୍ୟୁସନ ମେଥଡଟା କାହା ଉପରେ ବେଶ କରିବ? On the basis of his competence and also on the basis of his merit. So Goldman maintains that the desert rule create incentive for individuals to develop their capacity and competency. ଯଦି ଜଣଙ୍କ ପାଖକୁ ତାର ବେନିଫିଟ ବା ବର୍ଡନଟା more so he shall be attracted for the benefits on the basis of his competence, ତେବେ ପ୍ରତ୍ୟେକ ବ୍ୟକ୍ତି ତାର କମ୍ପିଟେନ୍ସ ବା ମେରିଟକୁ ବଢେଇବା ପାଇଁ ଆଗଭର ହେବେ. They shall be trying to increase their capabilities, their competence, their merit. You know, thus, according to this principle of desert, the most competent acquire a prima facie right to the position and can claim that their legitimate expectations to the positions be fulfilled. So this is the principle of desert in nutshell. Then what is the principle of need? Second principle of distribution. ଦେଖନ୍ତୁ ଏଟା କହୁଛି ବିଭିନ୍ନ principles of distribution of the social advantages or the outcome of the development process, benefits of the development. Second principle is principle according to the need. ସେତିକି ଆପର୍ସନ କରାଯିବ ବା ତାକୁ ଦିଆଯିବ ତାର ଯେତିକି ଆବଶ୍ୟକତା ରହିଛି, distribution according to the need. Distribution of benefits and burdens may be justified on the bare biological necessities of life. The advocates of this approach maintain that the individuals who cannot meet their essential material needs through free transactions have a right to have these needs which is made out of the assets of others. So, the principle that basic needs be guaranteed by the government to those who cannot meet them through their own efforts have come to acquire an entrenched status as one of the fixed moral imperatives governing our political life. You know, Kropotkin, he's one of the leading advocates of the approach which interprets justice as distribution according to the need. In need theory, ଜଣେ ବଡ଼ ପ୍ରବକ୍ତା ହେଉଛନ୍ତି କ୍ରପଟକିନ୍. ଆପଣ ଶୁଣିଥିବେ କ୍ରପଟକିନ୍, ବାକୁନିନ୍, ନିଡ୍ ଥିଓରିର ସେ ଜଣେ ମେନ୍ ପ୍ରବକ୍ତା. ସେ ତାଙ୍କର ଏଇ ଥିଓରିର ମେନ୍ ଡିଫେନ୍ସ ଦେଇଛନ୍ତି. The means of production being the collective work of humanity, the product should be the collective property of the race. Individual appropriation is neither just nor serviceable. All belong to all. All the things are for all the men. Since all men have need of them, since all men have worked in the measure of strength to produce them, and since it is not possible to evaluate everyone's part in the production of the world's wealth, that is why needs should be the basis of apportioning, distribution of the benefits. Then another principle is the principle of balance. What is this principle of balance? You know, this to understand this basic principle, I mean principle of balance, take the principle of research, the principle of need, then the principle of balance. This side, the best arrangement obtains when research remains the main element in the allotment of the advantages, and need criterion also finds place as a subsidiary rule of distribution. And this idea would support the general framework of a liberal welfare state. The liberal welfare state. And A single perception of just distribution, accommodating both the principle of need and the principle of desert, is seen at work by Miller in the contemporary market societies. जोटा कि से contemporary market society की Miller has termed it as organized capitalism, and he has distinguished it from the early market societies जहाँ भावुला जहाँ सी ही टर्म देचंदी फ्री मार्केट सोसाइटीज. Previous one is the free market society, and the contemporary market societies are termed as organized capitalism by Miller. You know, the distinction between Rawls' conception and the Miller's conception is that John Rawls interprets the advantage of the better off as pure incentives, whereas the latter regards them as deserved rewards. Rawls believes that a single conception of distributive justice can work in all types of societies, whereas Miller's argument is that conception of social justice varies from one type of society to the other. Rawls ଗୋଟେ ୟୁନିଫର୍ମ ସିଙ୍ଗଲ distributive justice ରେ ବିଶ୍ୱାସ କଲା ବେଳେ Miller କହୁଛନ୍ତି no, that differs from one society to the other. So conception of social justice according to Miller varies from one type of society to the other type. So single conception of distributive justice cannot hold good. You know, most often justice is linked with the conditions of human existence and also human development. And this view projects fair and just access to the basic requirements to existence and the development of every individual. We must here take into consideration two aspects of popular thinking about justice that are very important from a practical point of view. One aspect concerns the just distribution of specific goods such as housing or medical treatment, and the practices that have evolved to affect such type of thinking will vary from good to good. Then also there are some generalized resources like money that do not immediately invoke any particular benefit or belief how they should be distributed. This is one aspect. And another aspect of about popular thinking about justice is procedural justice, which believes that what counts as a fair procedure for deciding on the allocation and distribution of a certain good. So, likewise, before us, there are three criteria of distribution: the desert, need, equality. We find one point of contrast between the first two, that is desert and need. And also, one point of contrast with equality, need and desert. We may face difficulty when trying to determine how to divide resources in such a way as to match the different deserts or needs of several individuals. So, alternatively speaking, we are told that several people have made different contributions to achieving some goal, but they are not told how big their contributions are. Then, coming to another important part of the discussion, was influencing people's preferences for distribution in small groups. Hello? 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 Am I audible now? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Actually, 4-5 ମିନିଟ୍ ଟିକେ ଡିସ୍କନେକ୍ଟ ହେଇଯାଇଥିଲା. Now am I audible? Okay? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. So, so factors which are influencing the people's preferences for distribution. Society is also one important. Here I can also talk of, you must have heard about Adam Smith, the economist, his equality index. You know, the fairest way of distribution wealth and income would be to give everyone equal shares. Then it is simply luck if some people are more intelligent or skillful than others, so they do not deserve to earn more money. The government should place an upper limit on the amount of money any one person can make. So Adam Smith and his collaborators, they have constructed an equality index following these three items. ये तीनटा का आइटम को बेस करके ସେମାନେ ଗୋଟେ equality index create करते. Again I am repeating, the fairest way of distribution of wealth and income would be to give everyone equal shares. It is simply luck if some people are more intelligent or skillful than others, so they do not deserve to earn more money. Then the government should place an upper limit on the amount of money any one person can make. Government ଗୋଟେ upper limit ରଖେ, ନହେଲେ ଗୋଟେ ଲୋକ ତାର income କରି ଚାଲିଥିବ. Upper limit, ceiling must be given. We should have a brief reference to the Indian scenario so far as this equal distribution of benefits of development is concerned. Independent India set out to overcome its colonial underdevelopment on the basis of planned development of its agriculture, industry, and human resources. Overall assessment and evaluation of the needs of India's autonomous development free of subordination to the metropolitan interests. You know, around more than 4 decades of planning, it shows that India's economy, a mix of public and private enterprise, is too large and diverse to be wholly predictable or responsive to direction of the policymakers and planners. Actual result ଆମେ ଯଦି ଦେଖିବା, target ଠାରୁ ସେଟା ବହୁତ ଅଲଗା, different from the targets. Actual results differ in important aspects in the planned targets. Major shortcomings include insufficient improvement in income distribution and alleviation of poverty. There is a shift in government's approach towards development. ARC, Administrative Reforms Commission 2006 report ଏଟାକୁ ଏଇ ସର୍ଭେଟାକୁ ଦେଇଛି. Instead of relying only on increase in general affluence to enhance the living standards of citizens. The approach is to consider the acquisition of minimum levels of education, health, employment opportunities, nutrition as the basic entitlements. There is also increased emphasis on promoting balanced development in which all regions in the country have the opportunity to develop evenly. You know, the Indian economy on the eve of the 11th plan was in a stronger position. An approach to the 11th five-year plan, Planning Commission 2006, that it has really it has served as a pointer to this fact. But in spite of that, a larger chunk of our population are yet to experience a decisive improvement in their standard of living. A great number of people, they still lack access to the basic services. In spite of the planning and all the knowledge, expertise and knowledge being put to the planning process and all that, sizable chunk of the population are still deprived of the benefits of development. You know, here the key concepts are dependency theory, the Human Development Index (SDI), then sustainable development. These are the three key concepts also which we must bear in mind. Basically, third world countries and the first world that create a worldwide approach and a world view which suggests that the wealthy nations of the world need a peripheral group of poorer states in order to remain wealthy. Center periphery relationship. You know, dependency theory ଉଭୟ ଥାର୍ଡ ୱାର୍ଲଡ ଆଉ ଫାର୍ଷ୍ଟ ୱାର୍ଲଡର ଇଣ୍ଟେଲେକ୍ଚୁଆଲ୍ସ ବା ସ୍କଲାର ମାନେ କହିଛନ୍ତି ସେମାନେ ଗୋଟେ ୱାର୍ଲଡ ଭ୍ୟୁ ନେଇଛନ୍ତି ତାପରେ which suggests that the wealthy nations of the world need a peripheral group to sustain, to improve, to remain wealthy. Dependency theory. Otherwise, ସେମାନେ wealthy ରହିପାରିବେନି. So, wealthy nation ଯୋଉମାନେ claim କରୁଛନ୍ତି of the world, ସେମାନେ ଗୋଟେ peripheral group ଉପରେ depend କରିକି wealthy ହେଇଛନ୍ତି. So, dependency theory emerged in 1950s first. Roll Lebis, he advocated this theory. ତାଙ୍କର ରିସର୍ଚ୍ଚ ସେ ଦେଖେଇଛନ୍ତି that the wealth of the poor nations tended to decrease when the wealth of the rich nations increased. So, the other factor is Human Development Index (SDI). It is a comparative measure of life expectancy, literacy, education, and standards of living for countries worldwide. It is a standard means of measuring well-being, especially child welfare. So, SDI by Human Development Index is used to distinguish whether the country is a developed country or it's a developing country or this is an underdeveloped country. ये इंडेक्स टाको यूज करी गोटे कंट्री रो इकोनॉमिक स्टेटस को डिटरमिन करा होछि कैटेगराइजेशन whether the nation is developed or whether the nation is developing or the nation is still underdeveloped. So HDI measures the average achievements in a country in three basic dimensions of human development: a long and healthy life as measured by the expectancy at birth, knowledge as measured by the adult literacy rate, then a decent standard of living as measured by gross domestic product per capita and purchasing power parity PPP. So every year United Nations member states are listed and ranked according to these measures. तांकर ranking ए measures index SDI को use करी करा जाउछि. Then another important key concept here one must bear in mind is sustainable development. Very, very important. It is a term used to describe methods of creating economic growth which protect the environment, which relieve the humanity of the poverty and deprivation, and they do not destroy natural capital in the short term at the expense of long-term developments. ତେଣୁ ସଷ୍ଟେନେବଲ ଗ୍ରୋଥରେ କ'ଣ କୁହାଯାଇଛି ଆପଣମାନେ ଧରନ୍ତୁ ବ୍ରୁଟଲ୍ୟାଣ୍ଡ ରିପୋର୍ଟ ବିଷୟ ପଢ଼ିଥିବେ ଯୋଉଟାକି ସେ ରିପୋର୍ଟଟାକୁ କୁହାଗଲା ଆୱାର କମନ୍ ଫ୍ୟୁଚର ଦ୍ୟାଟ୍ ଇଜ୍ ଏ report on sustainable development, and that report has defined sustainable development like this: that development is development which meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. ତେଣୁ short term benefit by economic benefit ନାହିଁ, ଆମେ long term growth को ଆମେ hazard ଭିତରକୁ ଟାଣି ନବା ନାହିଁ. That means we cannot destroy the natural resources which is the support system of the development, economic development, and we cannot pursue the short term developments or economic development at the expense of or at the cost of long term developments. Sustainability. Sustainable development अर्थ डेवलपमेंट प्रोसेस टाକୁ ଏମିତି ହାର୍ନେସ୍ କରାଯିବ ଯେ ପ୍ରେଜେଣ୍ଟ ଜେନେରେସନର ନିଡଟାକୁ ସେ କ୍ୟାଟର କରିବ, ତା ସହିତ ଫ୍ୟୁଚର ଜେନେରେସନ ମାନଙ୍କର ନିଡଟାକୁ କରିବ ନାହିଁ, without compromising the needs of the future generation. This is the concept of sustainable development and mostly emphasized upon by the Brundtland Commission or the World Commission on Environment and Development. So the Human Development Index, dependency theory, and sustainable development, these are the key concerns so far as the benefits of economic development are concerned. Then we can have a pleasant journey to other discussions. Partnership among different levels of government, union and state governments. Because you know, different fields of partnership between the union and state governments, like revenue assignment, industrial policy reforms and investment, the fiscal needs or economic needs, the role of investor in the social sector. So we'll have a very brief discussion on these points so that we can appreciate the role of partnership among the different levels of government in the process of decentralized governance and also in the process of development. Here we can, our discussion can help us to find out the need of partnership among different levels of the government. Government ର ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଲେଭେଲରେ why partnership is required, and also we can highlight the areas of partnership, then also multi-layered decision making centers, and also the role of the investors in social sectors. You know, प्रेजेंट एरारे आमे जहाको जेकोसी स्कॉलर हो, रिसर्चर हो, any intellectual, if you ask, they will agree that decentralization of government is a good thing, right? But there must be proper platforms, programs where the healthy partnership can be created among the different levels of the government so that governance can yield good results, benefits. Because participation by bringing government closer to the citizens and economic grounds, those of enhancing efficiency and effectiveness of public services and public service provisions. Because many agencies they view this process of decentralization as an effective instrument of combating poverty. Decentralization, that means the transfer of authority and responsibility from the central to the intermediate and local governance, which in the other classes I have already told you, and repetitively कहुचे, जे decentralization बଳରେ गोटे decision making प्रक्रिया बा authority को percolate कर दिया जाए विभिन्न लेवल को, from the central level to the local level. It aims to address failures to foster development and reduce poverty and to consolidate democracy. देखिବାକୁ गले कौन छोटे आमे theoretically speaking गोटे standard model of decentralization को devise करबा difficult. There are कारण तापरे विभिन्न प्रकार advocates तांकर निज निज angle से चिंता करिसंती. So standard model of decentralization virtually is non-existent because it varies considerably from country to country. विभिन्न social, economic and political factors को लेकरी devolution of power और decentralization of authority को चिंता करा जाए. And idea of decentralization is linked to subsidiary or the lowest level of the government, which can perform functions effectively and also efficiently. Economists माने हम तो political scientists मान का angle रू political decentralization विषय मध्य चिंता करी we have discussed. Economists मान को जदि पचरा जीवो, they justify decentralization on the grounds of allocative efficiency. enhancing the responsiveness of policy making and the effectiveness of the poverty reduction. So the challenge is to maintain a poverty focus at central and local levels, especially given the risks of local governments, which is being captured by local elites, interest groups, and of the problems such as corruption, gender bias, which is also being replicated in local levels. So, not all government functions can or should be decentralized. ଆମେ ଦେଖିବା ଯେ decentralization ତ ସବୁବେଳେ ଗୋଟେ panacea ନୁହେଁ. Not that this is a cure for all the problems or ailments. Not that all the functions of the government should be decentralized. What type of functions should be decentralized also there is a meticulous analysis. And decentralizing the weak states may compound the problems. Decentralization actually ସେଇଥିପାଇଁ ଗୋଟେ ୱିକ୍ ଷ୍ଟେଟକୁ ଆମେ ଯେତେବେଳେ ବିଲ୍ଡ ଅପ୍ କରୁଛେ ତାର ଇକୋନୋମିଟା it has been started anew. Sometimes decentralization may put or it can put some hazards. Small island states may not be ideal candidates. An appropriate balance of centralization and decentralization is essential. Weak state मानकरे आमे जदि हठात decentralization तो हम experiment करिबा, then we shall find country's economy shall be more weakened rather. से समय centralized planning दरकार. आपण गोटे political setup रो विचार करू नाहंती. आमरो मु गोटे थी I can cite you one example that when our constitution was being prepared, we have started, when from Article 1, which describes India as a union of states. I'm not taking much time on that, but it is a brief reference that how, when a particular nation is being built upon, it is starting its democracy anew. The democracy is in a nascent stage. We could not venture to go for a strong federation like America, where or we have put federal arrangements in such a way that the union government shall be stronger. Think in terms of the planning commission, finance commission, all these things are centralized bodies. Because we want to start anew our economy. Democracy is a nascent experimental stage. ଅନେକ ସମୟରେ weak state ଗୁଡାକରେ ନୂଆ state ଗୁଡାକରେ island countries ଗୁଡାକରେ when the economy is virtually is under experimentation, there must be a proper balance between centralization and decentralization. Which functions of the states should be centralized? Which functions of the states should not be centralized? There must be a clear analysis. Decentralization requires a strong central entity to regulate, to provide an overall framework to manage the relocation of responsibilities and resources. So, there can be different fields of partnership. Government of বিভিন্ন লেভেলରେ जो partnership ତାର ବିଭିନ୍ନ ଏରିଆକୁ demarcate କରାଯାଇଛି. For example, revenue assignment, task instruments available for their revenue needs. So principles of the tax assignment, ଟିକସରୁ ଆସୁଥିବା ବିଭିନ୍ନ revenueକୁ କେମିତି assign କରାଯିବ. This task assignment depends partly on the mix of various tax used in the country. In public finance theory, the issue of the ideal task mix, even in the unitary state, has not been widely developed. And the importance of the various taxes in the overall mix remains, however, a matter of judgment rather than something that can be deduced from the principles. Then also, efficiency of the internal common market. The internal common market will be functioning efficiently if all the resources like labor, capital, goods, services, they are free to move from one region to the other without any impediment or without any distortion imposed by policy. This helps in increasing efficiency of the internal common market. Decentralized tax systems can interfere with the efficiency of the economic union in two ways. Tax system ବିକେନ୍ଦ୍ରୀକରଣ ହେଲେ इकोनॉमिक यूनियन एफिशिएंसी की दी प्रकार भाव से अफेक्ट करि पारे. For one, uncoordinated setting of the taxes is likely to lead to distortions in markets for resources. And this problem can be lessened, it can be mitigated considerably if the state government recognizes that resources are mobile. So if all the jurisdictions engage in such policies, the end result will simply be inefficiently low taxes on mobile factors. Then another important area is national equity. The tax transfer system is one of the main instruments for achieving redistributive equity. You know, the very argument for making equity a federal objective is simply that all persons ought to enter into the society is a social welfare functional on an equal basis. And presumably, the federal government is the only level that can ensure that residents in different regions are treated equitably. So federal arrangements in this case can go a long way. So to the extent that equity is viewed as being a federal policy objective, decentralized taxes can interfere with the achievement of those objectives. Also, given the mobility of labor and capital across the states may engage in perverse redistributive policies using both taxes and transfers to attract higher income persons and repel low income ones. Another important hint must be given to the industrial development policies and also reforms in matters of industrial policy. You know, the new industrial policy of 1991, in case of India, we have accepted new industrial policy. It promoted investment, both domestic and foreign, through de-restriction of domestic production and investment. A number of measures they have since been taken to further ease the process of private participation in investment. So, what are the investment incentives? Central government investment incentives are like this: 100% profit deduction from developing, maintaining, and operating infrastructure facilities. Tax exemption of 100% on export profits for 10 years. These are the incentives, incentives in investment for investment. Then deduction in respect of certain intercorporate dividends. Various capital subsidy schemes and fiscal incentives for expansion in the northeastern regions. Then tax deduction of 100% of profits for 5 years and 50% for the next 2 years for undertakings in special economic zones, SEZ. So this is a special economic policy for the SEZ or special economic zones. So these are the incentives under the central government. Then what are the incentives under the state government? Single window approval system for setting up industrial fruits. Then electricity duty, registration fee and stamp duty exemption. Reservation of plots of NRIs, foreign investment projects and all that. Rebate on land cost, rebate on tax concessions, then octroi refunds, interest rate and fixed capital subsidy. State government तरफ investors incentive. A incentive investment shall be higher. Investors shall be attracted. So this is the few list of investment incentives by central government and also incentives by the state governments. Maintaining the fiscal responsibility is very crucial and also critical. So local governments must have adequate revenues, either raised locally through taxes or transferred from the center, as well as the authority to decide on spending. To ensure accountability, revenue means through ଆମର taxes ଆସୁଛି ଯାହା through tax ଆଦାୟ ହେଉଛି, it should be matched as closely as possible with revenue needs. Expenditure responsibilities of both the central and local governments must be made legally explicit to enhance accountability and reduce overlap. So, with a view to attract investors, including those from the overseas, foreign country madhya investor manku attract kariya pai overseas ru, many states are offering incentive packages in the form of various tax concessions, capital and interest subsidies, reduced power tariff, कम खर्च इलेक्ट्रिसिटी जोगे दबा पावर टैरिफ दबा so that the investors shall be attracted to invest. अनेक स्टेट गवर्नमेंट मध्य ए प्रकार कंसेशन पैकेज मध्य दउछन. And regarding administrative decentralization, the local governments must have the capacity to carry out their new functions. Civil servant reforms is a critical component. Local government often creates new layers of government which may overwhelm the national budgets, as the increase in the local staff may not be matched by a reduction at the central level. So most of all, what happens? The bureaucracies, they tend to resist reform on political grounds like career perspectives, institutional allegiance, political networking. Then another important area to be given attention is improving social service delivery. New local government's responsibilities include social services like education, healthcare, infrastructure, I mean communication, roads and buildings, water and irrigation, sewage, natural resource, protection of the natural resources, social safety. So subnational governments, they have increasingly taken the responsibility for providing and also funding local public goods such as roads, water, sewage system, transit power, telecommunication, etc. So role of the government is most important. Over the years, role of the government as a direct investor has diminished with the advent of liberalization. It remains an active player in the investment domain. Current scenario re, role of the government as a direct investor has diminished, but it has assumed certain new roles. Particularly, there are four critical roles which the states assume in the advent of liberalization, globalization, as an enabler of private investment activity, as a provider of critical infrastructure that can support production activity, then as a partner of the private sector. PPP modes, they are coming up, public private partnership. You must be knowing in most of the sectors this scheme is operating, PPP, public private partnership. Then as an investor in the sectors like health and education. So the governance refers to the management of such process which is in society define the environment that enables individuals to increase their capability levels and provide opportunities to realize their potential and enlarge the set of available choices. The quality of governance is a critical determinant of the investment climate. Good governance can improve the incentive to invest, establishing credibility, fostering public trust. So, virtually, governance now is doing the role of one enabler. It enables, providing the necessary opportunity where the trust can be, public trust can be created, credibility can be established. So, the policy making in the post liberalization phase has focused on a long term perspective and has signaled a commitment to the process of reforms. The smooth functioning of the intellectual property right, very important. There are governance initiatives in intellectual property rights. You know, The functioning of this intellectual property right regime is critical to the growth and development of knowledge incentive sectors. And recently, the government has taken up a lot of steps, initiatives in modernizing and revamping the IPR regime, that is, intellectual property right regime. For example, India recognizes both the product and process patents from 2005. The intellectual appellate tribunals was made functional from September 2003, and major initiatives are also underway for modernizing intellectual property administration, such as computerization of intellectual property administration, creation of a digital database of the patents, trademarks, the liquidation of the backlog, and design records. So these are all government initiatives in the field of intellectual property rights. And also governance in the role of the provider of infrastructures. So not only that is it is in the role of an enabler, it is also in the role of provider of infrastructures. And social sectors like health, education are critical to the development process. So the government also is in the role of an investor in the social sectors like public goods services, education, health. The government needs to be an active investor. Second, the need of the enabler, role as a provider of infrastructure, then role as an investor in the social sectors. Then we can have also a discussion on partnership among the different levels of the government, that is the local authorities. I mean, union level, state level, governance বা গভর্নমেন্টের মেশিনারি রোল হিসাবে ideas kole, but also in the democratic decentralization process, because the role of the local authorities and special purpose agencies are important. We should also have a discussion on that. You know, we must understand the significance of the special purpose agencies in the specific field of education, health, telecommunication, and other basic areas. Then we must comprehend the local administrative structure which is prevalent during the present time in our country. Then what improvements also can be suggested in that functioning? Definitely, if we have a look to the local administration structures in India, it gives us a hydra-headed picture. Apart from the three-tier local government structure, today we have discussed three-tier structures like in the rural side there is the Panchayat Raj institutions in the Gram Panchayat level, Panchayat Samiti, Jila Parishad. in the urban side also, the local administration in NSCs, municipalities and municipal corporations. But apart from this, special purpose agencies, they have been set up under separate acts of the parliament. थ्री टायर सिस्टम तो लोकल सेल्फ एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन पे रही बाद पार्लियामेंटारी एनाक्टमेंट द्वारा अनेक स्पेशल पर्पस एजेंसीज दे हैव बीन आल्सो सेट अप. You know, this SPS, Special Purpose Agency, is an autonomous body within the powers given to it and has its own resources of revenue. ତାଙ୍କ ଅଟୋନୋମି ତାଙ୍କର ଫଙ୍କସନରେ ଦିଆହେଇଛି ଏବଂ ତାଙ୍କର ସୋର୍ସେସ୍ ଅଫ୍ ରେଭିନ୍ୟୁକୁ ସେମାନେ ମଧ୍ୟ କ୍ରିଏଟ୍ କରିପାରିବେ, ସେଥିରେ ମଧ୍ୟ ଅଟୋନୋମି ଦିଆଯାଇଛି. There are three distinct rationale behind such a structural distinction. काहेकि हमें फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल व्हाई वी हैव गॉन फॉर द स्पेशल पर्पस एजेंसीज. हमर तो ऑलरेडी देयर इज ए लोकल गवर्नमेंट सेटअप, they can carry out these functions, किंतु SPL आवश्यकता तेबे काहेकि आसला? Because certain activities they require specialized attention. With the complexity of administration, with the growing problems of the population, there are certain activities which require specialized attention, and hence separate specialized organizations or agencies have to be set up to look after that particular problem. Simply they cannot be decided within the general framework of the general administration. Certain activities, they need to be kept out of the political control in order to be efficient. Our local self government, who by state government, who by union government, they are all under this domain of political influence. But there is a need that in order to improve the efficiency, competency, political influence must be kept away. So certain activities need to be kept, they need to be kept outside this political influence or political control so that they can be more effective. Then certain functions cannot be confined to the jurisdictional boundary of a certain municipality. Gote nirdishto jurisdiction bhitere gote nirdishto municipality. So I mean there are certain areas of activities which are cutting across various regions, various municipal areas and all that. So inter-jurisdiction is both logical in certain matters such as education, even transportation, telecommunication, water supply, electricity, sewage disposal. These are certain areas जोटा कि गोटे निर्दिष्ट म्युनिसिपल एरिया बा गोटे लोकल एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन जुरिसडिक्शन भितर ताकू हमें we cannot do justice to those particular areas. Think in terms of the broader scheme में हमें देखा environmental protection. Think of air pollution. There are certain problems which are transnational. Think of air pollution. The polluting factory of a neighboring country can also pollute the neighboring country's atmosphere. That is why international laws and regulations are required. ठीक सेम थी गोटे निर्दिष्ट म्युनिसिपालिटी भीतर केतोडे प्रॉब्लम को गोटे जोडा इंट्रा जुरिसडिक्शन रे सेटल करी हबो बट देयर आर आल्सो सर्टेन प्रॉब्लम्स व्हिच कैन नॉट बी सेटल्ड विद इन द जुरिसडिक्शन ऑफ द सेम म्युनिसिपालिटी और सेम लोकल गवर्नमेंट एरिया. So it is believed that a special purpose agency crafted outside the general administrative framework could fulfill all aforesaid requirements. Hence, the objectives of special purpose agencies. The name is special purpose. They are carved out for meeting the special needs. Technical which requires technical expertise. So, to provide improved and better public services, to emphasize commitment to transparency, dismantling the monopolies, and also to bring reforms in the public services. And it should not be confused with privatization. So, this is virtually regarding the rationale and purpose of these special purpose agencies in the specific context of education, healthcare provisions, telecom services, public sector undertakings, industries, rural development, likewise. The positive role of the state in education and public finance of education. There is near unanimity among the economists as well as others that the state should take interest in developing education. This is hello, hello, hello. Am I audible now? Hello. Okay. So how education is to be encouraged. State must take interest in developing education, but the controversy arises when the questions like that whether state should own and operate educational institutions, whether the state should encourage education indirectly through financing incentives. Controversy arises in those areas. So the two main grounds on which government intervention in education can be rationalized are neighborhood effects and paternalism. The government gives explicit grants to institutions, but the students who go to the schools and colleges enjoy certain implicit grants. It is generally agreed that explicit grants help the poor, but it is argued that implicit grants tend towards greater inequality, but they help the rich more than the poor. The subsidy element in the fee structures may be thought of as a form of implicit grant. Since 1960s, investment in man, it has become as important as investment in machine. Investment in man has become important or sometimes more important than investment in machine. The more important types of human investment include health facilities, services, on-the-job training, formal education, etc. The role of education in the economic development of a nation was underlined by some economists long before the birth of economics of education as a distinct branch of economics. So, positive government policy in education, as Professor Willis says, did not begin until 1833. In fact, some of the policies of the government in England before 1833 actually hindered in effect public education. This is a study in a particular area because education is something which is investing in education is like investing in man, which is more important than investment in machines. In most of the countries, higher education is primarily financed at the state level, but the federal government, that is the union level, in our case, it's called the union level, plays an increasingly important role. And education in India has been a growing sector since independence. So virtually, role of the state in the field of education is virtually, this is the area where the attention is given. Constitution of India has made education a state subject. The 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, however, has included education in the concurrent list. Then the seventh schedule, that is list 3, concurrent list, includes education, including technical education, medical education, and universities, subject to the provisions of the entries. That is 63, 64, 65, and 66 of list 1. This is a data and all that. So during last 50 years, education has developed practically into a joint responsibility of the union and state governments in India. And with the idea of providing the minimum of free and compulsory education for all children, the Constitution has made certain provisions in the directive principle of state policy, that is chapter 4. Just I shall cite one example, that the state shall endeavor to provide within a period of 10 years from the commencement of this Constitution for free and compulsory education for all education until they complete the age of 14 years. 14 वर्ष पर्यंत free education shall be imparted by the government. And the Constitution has made it obligatory on the part of the government of India to promote the educational interest of the weaker sections of the society. The state shall promote with special care the educational and economic interest of the weaker sections of the people, and in particular of the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes, and shall protect them from social injustice and all forms of exploitation. This is the constitutional provision. So there is financial assistance, and the provision of the financial assistance for programs of expansion and improvement of education is one of the important federal functions in education. And the concept of mixed economy in India, the government can play an unlimited role in the social sector by supporting the above areas in the social sector. The government can remove many obstacles to economic development by introducing a system of free and universal education, at least up to a certain stage, the government can lessen the backwardness of the people, increase their geographic and occupational mobility, and also by that the productivity of the labor can be raised. By investment in the right type of education, the government can increase the quality of the production agents. So education should modify the socio-economic and cultural framework of the society in such a way that it promotes knowledge and technical skills, and in general it can create the preconditions for economic growth. That is why investment of education is a basic thing, and the government must, including all the levels in the government, they must take special care for the improvement of education in the society. Then also there is case study of the healthcare sectors. Like education, healthcare is also primary sector. You know, what are the current problems? Current problems are persistent gap in manpower and infrastructure in government sector, especially at the primary healthcare level. In remote, rural and tribal urban slum areas, where healthcare is neglected and it requires utmost attention to improve it. There is suboptimal functioning of the infrastructure of the poor referral services. Plethora of hospitals in government, voluntary and private sectors not having appropriate manpower, diagnostics and therapeutic services and drugs. ଅନେକ ଅନେକ ଜାଗାରେ ଡାକ୍ତରଖାନା ନାହିଁ, ହେଲ୍ଥ କେୟାର ସେଣ୍ଟର୍ସ ନାହିଁ। ଯେଉଁ ଜାଗାରେ ଅନେକ ଜାଗାରେ ହେଲ୍ଥ କେୟାର ସେଣ୍ଟର ଥାଇକିନି ମଧ୍ୟ ଆଡିକ୍ୱେଟ୍ ନର୍ସିଂ ଫ୍ୟାସିଲିଟି ନାହିଁ, ମ୍ୟାନ୍ ପାୱାର ନାହିଁ, medical officers are not there, or therapeutic facilities are not there. So technological advances which widen the spectrum of possible intervention, increasing awareness and expectation of the population regarding healthcare. These are the areas where sufficient attention must be given. So here, National Health Policy of 2002 is important. It provided comprehensive framework for planning, implementation, monitoring of health services and goals. देखो हमें विशेष कर एजुकेशन और हेल्थ केयर ऊपर इम्पोर्टेंस दिया है because these are the basic areas where the improvements are vital, because they can only improve the economic standard, the economic growth, and also, for example, expand the frontiers of knowledge. They can also broaden the longevity and also nourishment and all that. Then another important aspect is privatization of health services. The most significant and widespread global trend is healthcare. Over the past decades, the increasing share of for-profit healthcare and its marketization across the societies. So in this process in the healthcare sector has paralleled the process of economic globalization and is intrinsically linked to it. While private medical practice and the dispensation of medical care for a price, they have been known for a long time. The commercialization, corporatization, marketization of healthcare are a phenomenon of the last quarter of the 20th century. In India, at the time of independence, there was a significant presence of the private sector, which was dominated by the individual practitioners. Bhura Committee, as per its estimates, the proportion of allopathic doctors in private practices was 73%, and the remaining 27% were in the government service. So far the health service is concerned, health sector is concerned. The proportion of the private nursing homes and hospitals was significant at the time of independence. However, these institutions they have started growing during 1970s and were restricted to urban areas and states where there were capitalistic growth in the agriculture. So, you know, many states like Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Odisha, West Bengal witnessed little private sector growth during the 1980s and 1990s. These are the statistics of various committees and all that, and also the statistics given the estimates as per the Bore Commission regarding the scenario of the health sector in India. So now there is a need for the paradigm shift. Partnership of the local authorities and special purpose agencies. It have, this partnership has evolved as a result of the pressure to ensure quality in providing public services. The demand for the services from the private healthcare sectors can be highly inelastic in the absence of a functioning of the public system as a base. The well functioning public health system not only assumes effective services to those at the lower ends of the socio-economic hierarchy, but also they can set ceiling for prices and a norm of quality in the private sector. You know, the World Health Assembly called on WHO, that is World Health Organization, to mobilize and encourage support of partnership in health development. So, World Health Organization participates in a number of global public-private partnerships, and this collaborative relationship transcends national boundaries. So, not only in health sector but also partnership among the local authorities and special purpose agencies in telecommunication sector. There is also a study. There is a reference to the gamut of the telecom services in India. They come to education, health, then telecom. For example, increased competition due to private entry in telecommunication, rapid technological advancements, reduction in pricing of the services. So telecom reforms are required, and those reforms also are being undertaken in many countries, include increased role of private sectors in the provision of telecom services. India has operationalized private sector participation through an assortment of the mechanisms, you know, contracting telecom services to private operation, opening up provisions of services to the private sectors, and also India increasingly is one of the most deregulated telecom markets in the world. Private participation is permitted in all segments of the services. And the government has liberalized this telecom sector in India. And you know why? The objectives are to ensure availability of the telephones on demand, to provide universal access to basic telecom services in all affordable prices, then benchmark telecom services with good standards and also with global standards. They can have that global standard uh, machineries and all that provisions, and also position India as a major manufacturing base and exporter of telecom equipments and achieving higher telecom penetration. So also there is also reference in your book so far as this partnership among the local authorities and special purpose agencies in agriculture sector to increase agricultural sustainability. You know, the trends in agriculture, its implication for sustainability and environment among the third world countries, especially India, show an alarming situation as its future requirements of production are more. Early warning system of ecological collapse, promotion of intergenerational unit equity, farm planning for long-term productivity, regional and national planning, heightening community awareness of environmental issues, promotion of land care practices, evaluation of new technologies, and international monitoring obligations. So, likewise, the partnership must grow between the local authorities and also special purpose agencies. Mostly in this chapter, the importance of the partnership between the local government and special purpose agencies are required so that a lot many achievements can be done in the field of education, health, telecommunication, then also uh, industries. So all these uh, sectors they have been touched upon very meticulously in this particular chapter. So investment in man, then value added services, global mobile personal communications by satellite, public mobile radio trunk services, very small aperture terminals, and these are the key points which have been dealt in this particular uh, chapter. So partnership among different levels of the government and specialized purpose agencies is a must so that the fruits of decentralization and economic growth can reach the people. ବିଶେଷ କରି ଏ ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଚାପ୍ଟରରେ ଆମେ ସ୍ପେଶାଲ ପର୍ପସ୍ ଏଜେନ୍ସି ମାନଙ୍କର ସିଗ୍ନିଫିକାନ୍ସ ଆଣ୍ଡ ୟୁଟିଲିଟି ବିଷୟରେ ମୋଷ୍ଟଲି ଜାଣିଲେ and also how various new areas they have come up in particularly these sectors like education, health, agriculture, telecommunication all over the world. So I think it is already time we should close our discussion for today. Okay, thank you for the patient listening.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. So after you go through your texts and all that, I think uh, more of doubts can be clarified and all that. Okay, thank you very much. I think it's time I should leave the platform. Thank you.